So I owed this video for a while now, and I'm going to talk about spectral editing in Reaper. And I'm going to be talking mainly about vocals, but you can apply this to any other instrument once you get the concept around your head. I'm going to use today a song that I was part of the production in some way, but apparently it's never coming out, so I'll be using that to avoid some YouTube copyright strikes. And it sounds more or less like this. Okay, and the groove follows that, and then the vocals come in, and it sounds like this.
Ya no sé qué debo hacer para volverte a ver. Debo reconocer.
So usually, and I'm going to leave my action list down below, remember that if you're new to Reaper, you can open your action list by using Shift plus the equal sign, or just search up top, show action list, and you will have the shortcut on your computer right there. I'm on Mac, so maybe on PC it could be different. So the action list is a place where you will find pretty much all of the things that you want to do inside of the session. There are some other menus, but you're going to look for something that's called Peak Display Settings. And even though I have already a toggle button up on my toolbar, I will just run and close this, and it will open up this really small window. And once I go into it, I see there are a lot of ways I can display my peaks. So instead of having my normal grayed out peaks that aren't very clear when I have a dark, like a black track, I can just shift into spectral peaks. And I'm going to show you one of the main differences of why this spectral view is very, very efficient when editing. First of all, remember that the zoom view doesn't affect the gain of the audio itself. Like, it doesn't matter if I go like this, or if I go like this. It's just for you to be able to look at stuff a lot bigger. And this is great for editing because you can find small spikes here and there, and we will run through them across this video. The rest of the options here are the opacity, that's the transparency of the peaks themselves. I usually have them at 100%. You could also rectify the peaks and only look at them up instead of watching the negative and positive range of them. You can make them mono, and I highly suggest that you have some presets here and there once you start figuring out what do you want to see or how do you like to see them. And down here, you can see that I have a noise threshold, right? So let me go further back in this same item. And now that I have this, you'll see that this is a really, really great outline. This means that there's probably nothing there. But if I lower the noise gate, the thing that it actually feels like there's something going on there, eventually I will get maybe some small color. You can see I will get eventually some color. But I want to gray that out because that's complete digital silence. So I want it right on the edge of just starting to gray out. Because if I put my mouse right on top of it, I have an option set up so I can look at the peaks by the position of my mouse. That's also really helpful when I'm editing, so I can more or less see where things are around. And there's also this variance parameter where I can actually see the transition of the colors. I wouldn't go down with this one. It doesn't make any sense to me. And the third thing that I usually use a lot is try to calibrate the colors of your peaks. So because of how the eyes perceive frequency, this is only at different octaves of how our listening system works. So my best suggestion is to try and match this, and probably your middle frequency, 1000, is green. Like that's a completely band pass of the spectrum. So I have it a little bit shifted under, but you can just click and drag it, and this might look a little bit better. The thing is that I want to be able to see whenever I'm dealing with more melodic content, with more consonant content, with more low-end content. And the closer I have my reds, my red near my piece and my low end content of my mouth, I can easily detect where those things are. Whenever I find S's across the spectrum, like here, I can actually see them and I can find them because they are really short sounds and they match the frequency. So I don't have to overthink it. Even if I had some other color of my track and I used the grayed out spectrums, I could try and more or less try and figure out, because of the way this frequency is moving, that this could be an S, but that's a little bit too slow for my taste. So I like to see it this way. So first of all, to start cleaning something like this audio, what I would do is I would go into the Reapack extension, because this is something that's downloaded from here. And I suggest I will leave those links in the description of the video. And I have these CS Smart Trim packs installed. Remember to right click, install, apply, and OK. And now they will show up on the action list. And I have them on the same place where Pro Tools will have them, in this case on the Shift plus the next key to the right, or just that key. So I can just trim using one single key on my keyboard. So first of all, I'm actually trying to cut silences because I'm going to be using the fades a lot. And this, for example, is a breath, right? Like, let's start with something really simple. The breaths are part of the beginning of pretty much every single phrase, and I can see that they belong in this part of the spectrum. And I can just time select this by using the lower bottom half of my media item. If your Reaper isn't behaving like that, open the preferences with Command plus comma, and then go into mouse modifiers, and I can select on the context media item bottom half, the left track, and I am selecting time. You can adjust different things here and there, but you can do a lot of things like lowering volume, and you can do a lot of stuff without having to go into this small knob right here. And I'm going to use all of that for proper editing. One thing that's probably 95% true is that maybe you're cutting way too much of the breaths of your main vocal. I'm going to select the time. I'm going to activate my stop play at loop option up here. And that's normal. Singers need to take breath. Like, they actually need to take breath. So one of the things that I would do most of the times with this, since it's going to come up in the level once I'm trying to bring up the vocals in the mix, or later on and in any stage, is that I can probably cut, I can probably split. Remember that in Reaper, for some reason, anything where you're dividing, like taking one single media item and making that two different things, it's called split item, right? So on your action list, you can look for split at zero crossing. I remember a friend with a big Reaper channel shared this tip without giving a shout to where he learned it, but I always use the zero crossing because the main difference is that whenever you go really, really in, you never want to cut far away from the zero line, from the zero voltage line. Because if I cut right here, I'm going to get clicks and pops. If I start my audio here, I'm gonna get clicks and pops unless I have proper fades. The huge benefit of having split at zero crossing is that whenever I run that action, it's going to move all the way up to the previous place where the waveform is actually on the zero crossing, and that lets me cut really fast without having to worry about that sort of thing. So whenever I'm cutting something like breaths, I can just go into that and I can just lower the volume a little bit, and now I can have a softer breath into the phrase. Not only that, I can also time select both of these, select both of those media items, and I can also run an action that it's called Crossfade items within time selection. And now I can just transition better from one to another without having these level differences. And here, yes, I know the multitrack is in Spanish, but here is a k sound, right? In this case, it's saying ¿qué voy a hacer? And this is really normal, but it's kind of spiky. So it could be a problem or it could not be a problem, but it's good to have it really clear and how long does it last, right? I can just edit it on its own, like just lower the level of it, or I can just dive in, split this into time selection, split this item at time selection or razor edit, and load any plugin that I'm using here to just compress this a little bit, EQ it, or do whatever I might need. Remember that in Reaper you can load plugins into the media items. But the whole idea is that but part of the idea is that whenever you keep on editing stuff, you will probably run into some spikes of volume. I'm using the shortcuts Shift plus up on the keys or Shift plus down to change the zoom of the waveforms.
Que aún me importa, no, no lo puedo esconder.
Like there might be some places where I actually have some spikes that I probably could compress. And this transition for me is probably the best way to show this example. It comes out from the pre-chorus and it's driving into the chorus. And I see there are so many syllables and consonants and vowels there. So maybe this transition is a little bit too harsh. So I could just take advantage of fading into it, right? And I can also see a little bit of a low frequency content right there that I might or might not want. It might be an issue if you're actually listening to it. And that's why you shouldn't just edit based on sight. That's why you should edit based on how is it sounding and support yourself on visual tools like this. Now it sounds like this. Probably I could use a little bit more level of the vocal. I'm going to bring it up. It's probably going to be a little bit dislocated from the rest of the track, but it's just for us to be easier to listen to what's happening. That's a P sound, right? A P sound. That's why we have that low end content right there. Because first, this is the hit of the air into the microphone, then comes the vowel, then comes the note, and then the release of the vowel comes. If there was a small piece of air or a piece of silence after this vowel, we will probably end up seeing a little bit of more low end content. Remember that the color that you are seeing is not the only one that's there, but it's the one that has the most amplitude or the most level, and that's why it's getting colored that way. So for example, this has a lot of something like that, right? Above 1.5 all the way to 5 and 6, and if I listen to that, it's another breathing, right? So it's that raspy throat. I think that's the way of saying it. Please correct me in the comments. So I could just cut that and I can just lower the level of that. And since I'm always splitting at 0 items, or I'm using the auto fades option where I'm cutting, I don't need to go and do this all and every single time. I don't have to do these steps every single time. So let's listen to that transition once again, and let me delete this and let me fade using another shortcut that you might want to use. Remember that my videos are full of shortcuts, so take notes because there are a lot of shortcuts, or have your Reaper open next to this video. I'm using Shift plus S, and this is like from the muscle memory from Pro Tools, where you have your fade into cursor or fade from the cursor, right? All the way until the end of the media item. So now it sounds a little bit more like this. Me duele y ya me vuelvo a perder. Me duele. And it's really important to always listen in context. So in context, now this sounds a little bit like this. Me duele y ya me vuelvo a perder. And I can start deciding that if I want my breaths more or less at -45, something like that, I can start like always dragging them down, like splitting and bringing them down. And once I have one as a reference, I can just always just drag the level of the media item down and have it there, or use the action to normalize MIDI items and have the peak at whatever number I might find useful. It's really interesting to start trying to figure out what to cut, what to split, what to silence, because we will probably also end up finding these sort of noises that maybe aren't as clear for many people. Let me show you. Like that's another, but it has like this small speed on it, and I'm always way too sensitive to that kind of mouth noises, clicks and pops, especially these saliva kind of things. It's normal for singers to actually have to breathe and open and close their mouths. Like that's normal. I think and I listen to some new trend where people want to make this hyper realistic, natural, fake natural sound processing, where they're leaving all of these noises up close. Probably it's part of this new trend of the ASMR community that many of us really don't like. Like, you have to make a choice. Either is fine, I don't mind whatever you're choosing as an aesthetic choice, but you have to know there's also an impact. There are people like me that simply will turn off the sound completely because there are a ton of mouth noises that I really don't want to listen. So one thing is to have the vocal up close, like really intimate, and have it like speaking to me or saying something really, really soft into my ear, and having all of this coming every single moment whenever they are finishing a phrase or about to start a new phrase. Like that's super annoying. So you have to clean it. And whenever you keep on running into stuff like this, for example, these kind of breaths, it's normal. And again, you have to clean them up, but you don't have to remove all of them. For example, this dark waveform, oh, like I hate that tongue movement. And I know the track, that's why I'm moving without listening way too much. But honestly, what I would end up doing is using the split at mouse cursor at mouse position after that, and deleting and fading in. Like that's what I would do, to be honest. I will just remove that noise completely. Then the next thing that you might want to start trying out is to start thinking about the whole level or the whole peaks and dynamics of the song that you're trying to edit. The softest peaks right here, let me change this track back to black because it's easier on the eyes for editing Spectral. I'm using the shortcut Option+C to set to custom color. Is that I can find more or less what's the average peak of my source singer or whatever, -25, something like that. My highest peaks are -12, something like that. That's more or less 12, 13 dB, something like that. And I know that for a delivery, I will probably end up having a range of my vocals from 3 to 6 to 9 to 12 dBs, depending on the genre. Most of the vocals, I think, oscillate pretty much on 6 dB because they have to move around the music, and we have very limited devices to play stuff on. So the problem aren't the big speakers, the problem are the really low amplifiers that have very low dynamic range. So we have to make the vocals fit in there, or different instruments in their own range, so they don't mask each other. So for example, this peak, like that's a really high peak. I could probably just edit it. I could use the automation of the waveforms to use the volume envelopes and maybe just trim it a little bit, and I can go like that instead of having to cut the item. But all of these are some things that I'm taking advantage of because I can see the spectral editings and I can see how the mouth is changing from one word to another. And once you start figuring out which peaks you want to take where, you have to decide how far down do you want to bring some stuff and how far up do you want to bring up some other stuff. maybe this up here. I'm just cutting here and there. I'm not really paying way too much attention. Let me listen to this. Let me pull further back. Well, that worked. Like, it's probably hours and hours of editing, and that works. I can see the S's right here. And for example, I know so many people are obsessed with de-essing stuff, and maybe it's a problem, but maybe it's not as much of a problem as you think. You probably don't need two S's on your vocal chains. Like, probably you don't. So what I would do with S's is that I wouldn't forget that there's this thing called Fletcher and Munson. And if the S is at a much lower peak level than the rest of my signal, I don't mind, because we are way more sensitive to this S sound than to this vowel sound, or than to this P sound wherever 1P is. Or probably this breath, even though the waveform is super, super low peak, this sounds pretty much at the same volume like this. Well, maybe like this. The volume of those two is pretty much close to each other, and it has to do with the Fletcher and Munson curve. Like, please think about it when you actually have to think about it, and yeah, like, think about it when you actually need to. And for example, other information that you might want to take advantage of when using the spectral editing is, I see this low rumble noise around -65. And this could be either some sort of hum that was in the room while recording or something like that. And I can just bring it up like really, really fast. And I'm just going to lower a little bit the peak so we don't lose our hearing. And let's listen to this. Like, that's room noise and ambient noise and a small room tone. So that's the sort of thing that you actually need to get rid of, because that's what makes vocal sound super clean. And that's why we use gating and other stuff, right? Because you keep bringing that room tone up, and it's going to be really, really annoying to keep on listening to the tone. See, for example, here I don't have that room tone. Here I have it. And that's one of the beautiful things of having the spectral peaks. Probably because this is already an exported track from another session, and I left some places here and there. But here I can really, really check where I want to completely mute this and just fade in. Remember, this is another mouthy sound that I really hate. And this is the breath. And I think by now you start to figure out what's the actual power of dealing with spectral editing in Reaper. Let's listen to this part as well. This is because the collocation of ven, maybe I'm a little bit off key, but since this is coming first from the chest and driving a little bit up, I have this lower tone first coming in and then into the vocals. Probably a good tip right here is that whenever I'm trying to also add some reverb to the vocals, let me show you some reverb in the vocals. I have very few processing on it just for it to be easier to listen to.
No sé qué debo hacer para volverte a ver.
One of the things that you can do, this is not mandatory at all, but one of the things that some people do is, once you have the send created towards your reverb or whatever effect you might want, in this case it's up top, you can open up, I'm using the Ctrl+A to view envelopes for current and last such track. This is a shortcut that I show pretty much on almost every single video. And now I'm going to just search for send volume, and I have it active. I can just click on it and it's going to be visible and active. And now I can look at what I'm sending into the reverb. One of the tricks that also makes the reverb sound super clean, and I can make also a video on that, is time selecting those S's as we have done before. I can select the track below and I can just start creating some automation so I don't send those S's into the reverb. So for example, all of the breaths might be already exacerbated, and honestly, this is one of the things that really make a difference. One of the great shortcuts here also is, since you can split time selected, because you have already lowered the level of these breaths and those S's and whatnot, you can just hold Shift, double click, and now you have your time selection, and it's easier to just go through the track and continue using that envelope. The other way is to use the razor edits and just keep on finding the rest of the S's. Probably this is another horrible mouth sound that I really don't want. And you can just keep on pasting it, holding Option and dragging the automation here and there. And you will also end up finding out that most of us have really strong, really strong patterns. By that, I mean that we always end up using like the same length of our pauses when we are speaking, person by person. So probably if you get, and if you land one of the breaths, you'll probably see that this and this are the same size, right? So let's do a really small experiment with that same idea in mind. I'm going to create an automation item, and now I'm going to create a pulled duplicate of it. And on the preferences, I could also just add another action, another sequence of modifiers, where if I hold Control, I'm going to copy the item and create a pull source. The idea of having a pull source is that whatever I do to one of it, it's going to happen to all of the copies. So if I have many S's, it doesn't matter because I could have this and I can just start finding the beginning of all of those breaths, and I just go zoom out and I find another one and I just match it, and I just go and find another one that more or less matches, and I just go find another one and this one matches, and I just go further down and this one matches. And even though this is really time consuming, it's still a lot faster than many other DAWs out there. I'm going to just, for example, remove this one from the pool by right clicking and removing from the pool, so I can edit this one and it can be a little bit longer, and I will just keep on doing that. Why do the expensive mixes sound like they sound? Because there's a lot of time investment in this. And why do they have time enough to make as much music and to mix as much music? Because they usually have assistants doing this every single time. But even as I'm speaking right now, you can see the amount of copies that I'm doing of this. And it's working in the end because all of that is what I don't want to send into the reverb. And I can just micro adjust stuff, and it's easier for whoever is doing the next stage in the mix or the production or whatever to just remove or modify a small thing in the session because they have a workflow already selected. And that's the difference, because they have extra time, because they have extra infrastructure of how to do this sort of mixes. Now they have a really clean reverb. So let me go here, and we are going to listen to a couple of parts of the vocal where I have some S's muted here and there into the reverb, and I'll bypass the automation envelope so you can listen to the difference of it on and it off. Let me go from here.
Como te extraño. Hoy te pienso.
I had to remove a mouthy sound right there. Let me start right here.
Hoy te pienso sin rencor. Recuerdo tu calor y quiero.
Let me just listen to the reverb so you can actually direct your listening only to that. Okay, and I'm going to remove all of this, and I can just undo it. Now we will listen to it without the sidechain compression because it's way too pumpy, with everything going into the reverb and delay. Let's go back and let's turn off again the dynamics.
Recuerdo tu calor y quiero revivir
I hate this sound.
hoy.
And I really don't want it to last longer, so I'm just going to extend this one a little bit more. And I can just like edit also a little bit. That works. And even though this isn't necessarily like the automation of the envelope on the SS and the breathings and here and there is not part of the editing tutorial, like I think it's part of the same mindset of how to take advantage of the visual spectral editing to start having some criteria of how to do stuff. If this video is helping you so far, I have a link down below to buy me a coffee, or you can just subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and share it with any other friend that's also making music in Reaper or is thinking about changing their workflow into Reaper. Any comment helps boost the algorithm to let them know that my videos are helping people so it can be shown to more people. And now let's go a little bit further in that same idea. I was hiding the big problem here because doing one vocal is not an issue. So I'm going to go into track and I'm going to go into the track manager. I think it should be here. Oh, I'm in another venue. Track manager. I don't know why I wasn't finding it. And I'm going to show you all of the backing vocals in this track. Okay, now you have to edit all of that, and that's quite tiring. And no one wants to do that. Like, that's a ton of work, right? So probably one of the best advices I could give you about how to deal with large amounts of backing vocals is just arrange them in the order as they are appearing, so you can just have a visual checklist of how you have cleaned up your stuff. I will have to make a video, and I think there should be videos about the dynamic split feature in Reaper. So I also have a shortcut for the dynamic split items feature. And the whole idea of this, because I'm sure there are videos, is that once you open it and you select media items, what this will do is it will set up a gate. That's this orange yellowy line right here. And once any waveform or audio crosses that, it's going to open as long as you have when gate opens and when gate closes. And it's going to try and cut all of the silence that you don't need because it's not singing or content. So build a preset for that, look at the window, figure it out, or just go into Kenny's video or Reaper Block's video or whoever's video and make presets for that so you can work faster every single time. And once you have that, remember that you can use H by default to heal, to put together all of the small items that probably have been cut way too much. And you don't need all of those extra fades here and there because we can still go in and micro adjust stuff. So the thing with backing vocals and also taking advantage of this spectral peak editing is that I have a much clearer visualization not only of the starting and beginning of the phrases, is that remember first that in Reaper we have had for a while now the align takes feature that if it's not like on the action list, go look it up in the RIA pack. You can run it and it's going to tell me that it's gonna take a long time because if you haven't cut it or split your items, it's going to analyze really long pieces of audio. So in this case, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to work with more or less the same length, clips of the same length. And now, whenever I have two or more media items selected, I can get the reference. That's the one always on the top. Yes, you can take your time. And then I can select the one on the bottom and hit get dub. And it's going to get the reference of the second one. And you can adjust a lot of parameters here. I probably will also end up making a video of this specific part. I'm not sure if there's a video on that. I don't think it is. And now with this small knob, you can just start dragging stuff and you can see how it's moving the phrases to the left and the right. So I'm going to listen to these phrases only without pulling the time so I can listen to how in time those two takes were sung.
Puedo perder entre tus ojos de miel que me hacen daño.
And I can see up here that these other backing vocals probably are in a lower register or a lower tone or a lower octave. So I have a lot of information on a first sight. So I'm going to first think about the rhythmic part of this. I'm going to bring it all the way to the extreme alignment, and I'm going to listen back again.
Puedo perder entre tus ojos de miel que me hacen daño.
And you can see how it's trying to figure out how much to stretch one thing or another. Here it's making it super slow, then super fast. And you can delete the stretch markers by holding Option and left clicking. But the great idea behind this, for me, is that once you have that first micro adjustment that I would usually just bring it up like maybe 30%. And for the sake of this video, I will just close it. But from here, I can start making more decisions. Like I can see that this S, that if they are not at the same time, it's going to be super annoying on the ears. And I can start also matching these k sounds, right? So I'm going to grab that one. And one other fun trick is that you can set your cursor first into place. And once I drag my stretch marker, it's going to snap into the cursor. Because I have my snap settings on right here, you can right click it, you can open it from the action list and dive into that as well. And I can keep on fine tuning this as much as necessary. But I already have some small anchors to start placing stuff where I want them. So for example, these are already more or less into place. These are working. Right now, I'm doing it more by a visual cue than a listening cue. I usually wouldn't do it like that, but here, like it's just for a fast example. I'm going to make this S a little bit shorter. And if it's moving really fast, I'll rather zoom in. There we go. This is easier to move here. This is probably easier a little bit there. And this is still a lot faster. Now we will listen back to this. Here, there's still an effect going on. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Entre tus ojos de miel que me hacen daño.
And once I'm done with the time stretching stuff and really fine editing of time, remember that you can use the time editing or you can do different ways of editing. I will keep on talking about that for different videos. You can start grouping your items in Reaper, item grouping, and I have like this global lock of the item properties toggle lock with Shift L in my case, and it's linked to this button on my toolbar. I have a whole video on how I built that toolbar on others. So once that's off, so for example, here I built this custom action where I can just toggle bypass and set on and off the grouping of the items and the tracks themselves. So I can just group a couple of things where I really need them and sometimes work with them separated if I need it. And of course, that's linked to my toolbar as well, so I don't always have to use my shortcuts. So because I have already more or less brought things in time to each other, now I can start cleaning them together. So I don't have to do it twice and I don't have to worry about some strange stuff. Remember to group your tracks. In this case, I'm using the set track grouping parameters. And let me bring this into, backing vocals and use media eraser edit follow, because even if the media items aren't grouped, I want to be able to edit all of them together, maybe all of the vocals or some vocals that are together. So now whenever I cut in one, it happens to the other one, and I can just start editing both of the tracks a lot faster and adding fades here and there. And once I'm done with that, I can just select all of these and remove them from the group. So I'll just do that action, couple of actions again. I can select all of the media items that I want to group and edit together. I can just group items, hitting G. I start doing my editing here and there. I want to be sure that they are part of the same group. Remember that you have a ton of groups available, so maybe just use some muscle memory for this. Maybe all of your drum things are the first 5 groups, and from 10 to 15 are vocals. Start building patterns so it's easier and your projects don't overlap against each other across time. whenever you need to work only on one track, you can just use the toggle of this. And it's a combination of toggle grouping of the media items and the track groupings bypass. And once I'm done with all of that, and even though if I have all of this grouped, and I can see it because I have this small chain icon in the media items, I can have different groups that don't relate to each other on the media items, and they don't have to affect each other. And that's one of the beautiful things of this, because they don't move together. So for example, all of these that are linked, these three that are linked, whenever I bring one to the left and I pick it up if I'm editing something, I can just start messing around with all of them. And once I'm done with it, I can just double click the header of the track even and do my shortcut so I can remove every single media item from the group. And for me, that sounds like a really fast way to work when you're trying to clean up stuff. And then just repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. Probably if the intention is like that, if you want your vocals to be all close to each other, you want to match them to the main vocal, or if your backing singer was a little bit more precise than your main lead singer, you might want to pull the lead singer into the backing vocal with the most precise action, or you could do some other tricks that I will definitely show in another video. So if you like this kind of videos and really want to improve the way you're using Reaper, hit that notification bell, subscribe to the channel, go into that, buy me a coffee link so you can support my work here on YouTube and I can keep on making these videos. Leave a comment, that helps a lot for the algorithm to show me to other people. And I promise to start using more my social media in English. So go down below, find my socials. Straight from Mexico City, my name is Juanchis, and thanks for listening.